Aiden and Lyriel had just stepped out of Thaloria's bustling marketplace when the sound of heavy boots and clattering armor turned their attention to the city gates. A massive figure, flanked by a group of similarly imposing warriors, strode confidently through the opening. The crowd parted swiftly, a mix of awe and fear on their faces. "This must be Grekthar, the orc warlord I've heard about," Aiden murmured to Lyriel, his hand resting casually on his sword hilt. Lyriel nodded, her eyes narrowing slightly as she assessed the new arrivals. "He looks every bit as formidable as the rumors suggest. Be on your guard, Aiden." Grekthar stopped a few paces away, his gaze locking onto Aiden. Towering overmost in the crowd, the orc's presence commanded attention. "Are you the human called Aiden? The one gathering forces to challenge the darkness spreading across these lands?" Aiden stepped forward, meeting Grekthar's intense gaze without flinching. "I am. What business do you have with me, Warlord Grekthar?" The orc's lip curled into a half-smile, half-sneer. "I've heard tales of your endeavors and seen the ripples they cause. I challenge you, Aiden, to single combat. Prove your strength and your right to lead. Win, and you gain the loyalty of my warriors. Lose, and you forfeit your claim to leadership." The crowd murmured, the tension palpable. Aiden glanced at Lyriel, who gave a subtle nod, her expression stoic. "I accept your challenge, Warlord," Aiden declared, his voice resonating with confidence. "I will meet you at dawn tomorrow, outside the city walls. There, we will determine whose path is just." Grekthar grinned, revealing a row of jagged teeth. "Brave words, human. Prepare well, for I will not hold back. Tomorrow, we fight." With a final nod, the orc turned and marched away, his warriors in tow. The crowd slowly dispersed, whispers of the upcoming duel spreading like wildfire. Aiden and Lyriel walked back toward their temporary quarters, their steps measured, their minds racing with preparations. "That was unexpected," Aiden said, breaking the silence. "I knew we might face challenges, but a direct challenge from an orc warlord is a test of your leadership and strength," Lyriel finished for him. "But it's also an opportunity, Aiden. If you win, Grekthar's warriors could be invaluable allies." Aiden nodded, his thoughts already turning to strategy. "I need to prepare, both physically and mentally. This won't be a simple duel. It's a statement to all who watch." "That it is," Lyriel agreed. "Tonight, we plan. Tomorrow, you show the world the leader you've become." They spent the rest of the evening in intense preparation. Aiden focused on honing his combat skills, while Lyriel gathered intelligence on Grekthar's fighting style, strengths, and potential weaknesses. Together, they crafted a strategy that played to Aiden's strengths and mitigated his disadvantages against a much larger orc. As night deepened, Aiden sat alone for a moment, reflecting on the path that had led him here. From a curious wanderer to a leader of a burgeoning coalition, every step had prepared him for challenges like this. Now, more than ever, he felt ready to face whatever the morning would bring. As the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Aiden and Lyriel arrived at the designated dueling grounds just outside Thaloria's walls. The open field, typically used for training and tournaments, was already filling with spectators from all walks of life, humans, a few curious orcs, and even some elves who had heard of the duel. Grekthar stood at the center of the field, his massive form clad in spiked armor, gripping a great axe that looked as though it could split a boulder in two. His followers, a band of formidable orc warriors, stood to one side, their expressions a mix of fierce pride and anticipation. Aiden stepped forward, his armor light to allow for mobility against the orc's brute strength. Beside him, Lyriel remained watchful, her keen eyes missing nothing. The Lord Mayor of Thaloria, having taken a personal interest, acted as the duel's officiant. "We are gathered to witness this challenge of strength and leadership between Aiden, champion of the coalition, and Grekthar, warlord of the broken spear. Let the duel be fair and to honorable defeat or victory." Grekthar grinned, showing off his tusks. "Let's see what you're made of, human." Without further ceremony, the Lord Mayor stepped back, signaling the start of the duel. Grekthar charged with a bellow, swinging his axe in a wide, devastating arc aimed directly at Aiden. Aiden dodged swiftly, using his agility to evade the heavy blows that thudded into the ground where he had stood moments before. "Grekthar, this doesn't need to end in death. Yield and join us," the orc warlord snorted, amused. "I expected no less from a human. Words during battle. Show me your strength, not your tongue." The duel continued, Aiden parrying and dodging, looking for an opening. He managed a few quick strikes, but the orc's thick armor blunted the blows. Aiden's strategy was to tire Grekthar out, relying on his own stamina and speed. Grekthar, growing impatient with Aiden's tactics, roared and launched a series of frenzied attacks, each more forceful than the last. Aiden used this to his advantage, sidestepping a particularly vicious swing that left Grekthar off balance. Seizing the moment, Aiden swept Grekthar's legs, toppling the massive orc to the ground. The crowd gasped as Aiden quickly stepped back, not pressing the attack. "Yield, Grekthar, your strength and honor are proven. Join us." And let's fight together for a greater cause. Grekthar lay there, breathing heavily, his eyes locked on Aiden's. The field was silent, the audience holding its breath. Slowly, the orc warlord began to laugh, a deep, rumbling chuckle. He stood, picking up his axe and planting it in the ground beside him. You fight well, human. I yield. My strength is yours, and my warriors will follow where I lead. The crowd erupted in cheers and shouts, both humans and orcs celebrating the outcome. Lyriel approached, her expression one of relief and pride. Well done, Aiden. You've won more than just a battle today. Aiden nodded, offering Grekthar his hand in a gesture of respect and alliance. The orc took it, his grip strong and firm. Let us talk, Aiden. I am eager to hear more of this cause that's worth joining. As the field cleared and the spectators dispersed, Aiden, Lyriel, Grekthar, and his closest warriors gathered under a large oak tree at the edge of the field. There, they began to discuss their future cooperation, laying the groundwork for what would become a pivotal alliance in the battles to come. After the duel had ended and the dust had settled, Aiden, Lyriel, and Grekthar, accompanied by his elite guards, retreated to a private room in Thaloria's largest inn to discuss the terms of their newfound alliance. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of tension and respect, as both parties were still measuring each other. Grekthar, now without his battle armor, appeared even more imposing, his broad shoulders and battle scars speaking of countless conflicts. Yet, his eyes showed a glint of strategic thinking as he regarded Aiden across the table. So, Aiden, Grekthar began, his voice deep and resonant. You fought well today. I did not yield easily. Tell me more about this cause that I have agreed to fight for. What is this darkness you seek to oppose? Aiden leaned forward, his expression serious. It's a threat that endangers all our lands, Grekthar. An ancient evil that's reawakening, seeking to consume and corrupt. It's not just one race or kingdom at risk. It's all of us, including your people. Lyriel added, we've seen signs and portents. The dead stirring in their graves, unnatural storms, and beasts acting with unnatural aggression. We believe that only by uniting the races can we hope to stand against this threat. Grekthar nodded slowly, absorbing the information. And what of my warriors? They will follow me into battle, but they must know why they fight, and what gains we can expect. Aiden understood the practicality of the question. Your warriors will gain honor and glory, of course, but also protection for your lands and people. And as allies, you will have a say in the council we are forming, a voice in our combined future. Grekthar grunted in approval. Good. And what of resources? Wars are won not just on valor, but on steel and sustenance. We will ensure your people are well supplied, Lyriel assured. Part of our alliance involves mutual aid, food, weapons, and healing. Each member of the coalition contributes and receives support. One of Grekthar's captains, a tough-looking orc with a skeptical eye, spoke up. And if one of us falls in battle, what then? What guarantees do we have that our sacrifices will not be in vain? Aiden met his gaze directly. No wars without risk, but I pledge this. Any losses suffered will be honored, and their families cared for. We are entering this alliance as equals, and I respect the price of loyalty. The discussion continued, with each point being debated in terms negotiated. As the meeting drew to a close, Grekthar stood, extending his hand across the table to Aiden. You have spoken well, human, and fought bravely. I will uphold my end of this alliance. Let us hope that together we are enough to turn back this darkness. Aiden shook his hand firmly. Together, we will either prevail or fall as one. But I believe we will prevail. As the orc delegation left, Aiden and Lyriel remained seated, reflecting on the day's events. Lyriel looked at Aiden with a small smile. You've grown much, Aiden. Today you've not only won a battle, but also secured a crucial ally. Grekthar's warriors are fierce. They will be invaluable. Aiden felt the weight of his responsibilities, now heavier yet somehow more bearable. Yes, we are stronger together. And tomorrow, we plan our next move. There are more allies to gather and more threats to assess. Aiden and Lyriel, along with their newly forged alliance of various races, convened in the strategic war room within Thaloria's fortified walls. The atmosphere was one of intense focus as they discussed deployment strategies and resource allocations. Suddenly, the room dimmed as if shadows were swallowing the light, and a cold gust swept through, extinguishing lamps and causing maps and papers to flutter wildly. What is happening? Lyriel exclaimed, instinctively reaching for her bow. Aiden stood up, sensing the presence of a powerful force. This is no natural phenomenon. It's the Creator. He's making his move. As the temperature dropped further, a voice boomed through the room, resonant and full of malice. So, you've united the races, Aiden. You think your newfound alliances can thwart my plans? Grekthar, the orc warlord, clenched his fists, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. Coward, show yourself instead of hiding in shadows. The air shimmered, and a vague figure appeared, its form blurred and shifting, a silhouette of darkness. Bravery? I see folly. But let's test the strength of your bonds. The trials I set forth will escalate far beyond what you have faced. Aiden stepped forward, his determination clear. Whatever you throw at us, we will overcome. We stand united, stronger than the sum of our parts. The figure chuckled, a sound that chilled the bone. We shall see, Aiden. Prepare for hardships you can scarcely imagine. With that, the presents receded, and light slowly returned to the room. The leaders looked around, shaken but resolute. Aiden addressed the room, his voice steady. This was a demonstration of the Creator's power and intent. We must accelerate our preparations. The real battle is about to begin. Discussion on strategy. We need to reassess our defensive positions, Lyriel suggested, scanning the maps. Whatever is coming, it will be more severe than the skirmishes we've handled. Grukthar nodded, his expression grim. My warriors are ready for a real fight. We'll hold the lines, no matter the cost. Sir Cedric, the human knight and tactician, joined the conversation. We should consider reinforcing our magical defenses. If the Creator is involved, this won't just be a physical battle. Aiden agreed. Exactly. Let's integrate our mages more deeply with the infantry units. Magic will be crucial in countering what's coming. The dwarf representative, a sturdy engineer named Balin, chimed in. I'll oversee the fortification of our strongholds. We'll make sure no dark force can breach them easily. Rallying the troops as the meeting concluded, Aiden took it upon himself to rally the troops. He walked among the men and women, elves, dwarves, and orcs who had committed to stand against the darkness. Today, we faced a mere hint of what's to come, Aiden proclaimed, addressing a gathering of soldiers training in the courtyard. The Creator will test our resolve, our strength, and our unity. But remember, each of you is here because you believe in a cause greater than yourself. He paused, making eye contact with several fighters, his gaze firm and encouraging. We are not just fighting to survive. We are fighting to protect our homes, our families, and our future. Stand strong, train hard, and keep faith in each other. The troops responded with a resounding cheer, the sound echoing off the city walls, a testament to their readiness and morale. Grukthar approached Aiden, clapping him on the shoulder with a heavy hand. Well spoken, human. They'll follow you to the ends of the earth. Aiden smiled, grateful for the support. Together, Grukthar, they'll follow us all. Let's make sure we lead them well. Back in the war room, Aiden, Lyriel, and their allies continued to plan under the newly heightened threat. Maps and scrolls were spread across the table, each marking strategic locations and potential enemy strongholds. The Creator's intervention means we're on the right path, but also that we're up against something far greater than we anticipated, Aiden stated, looking over the maps. We need to solidify our defenses and prepare for more severe encounters. Sir Cedric, his armor clinking softly as he leaned in, pointed to a series of locations on the map. These are key strategic points. If we fortify these, we can control the main routes into Thaloria and protect the surrounding villages. Lyriel, her eyes scanning the troop placements, added, our scouts report increased enemy activity in these areas. If we position our forces wisely, we can intercept and perhaps discourage further advances. Grukthar grunted in agreement, his massive hands folded. My warriors are ready. We'll hold the northern pass. Nothing will break through. Aiden nodded appreciatively, then turned his attention to the communication among the ranks. We need clear, uninterrupted lines of communication. Balin, how are the signaling systems holding up? The dwarf engineer, Balin, adjusted his spectacles. We've set up a series of signal towers from here to the outer settlements. They use a combination of fire and magic, visible day or night. Any sign of trouble, we'll know immediately. Good, Aiden replied. Now, let's talk about mobilizing our reserves. We need to ensure that we can replenish our front lines quickly if needed. Alana, who had been quietly taking notes, spoke up. I propose we train additional units of mixed races. Not only will this improve unity among our forces, but it will also enhance our tactical flexibility. Everyone nodded, and Sir Cedric added, I'll oversee the training. We'll prepare them for a variety of scenarios. As the meeting drew to a close, Aiden looked around at his allies, their faces set with determination. This is more than preparation, it's a statement. We're showing the Creator that we're not just scattered forces, we're a united front. Mobilizing allies the next few days were a blur of activity. Troops drilled from dawn till dusk, fortifications were strengthened, and scouts sent reports of the surrounding areas. Aiden took a hands-on approach, visiting training grounds, speaking with commanders, and ensuring morale remained high. During one such visit, he stopped to watch a sparring session between an elf and a human, both showing impressive skill and teamwork. This is what it's about, Aiden remarked to Lyriel, who stood beside him, watching the soldiers. Unity, strength through diversity, Lyriel replied. They're learning from each other, growing stronger together. That's right, Aiden said. It's not just our weapons and walls that will protect us. It's our spirit, our shared resolve. That evening, Aiden and Lyriel met with Alana and other tactical advisors in a smaller, more private room. They pored over intelligence reports and dispatches from allied forces far afield. Alana pointed to a dispatch from a distant elven city. They've seen an increase in dark creatures, similar to what we've encountered. They're sending reinforcements. This confirms it. The threat is widespread, Lyriel noted. Our coalition isn't just beneficial, it's necessary. Aiden folded the dispatch, his expression thoughtful. Each report, each letter from our allies, they're all pieces of a larger puzzle. The Creator is stirring fear and darkness across the land, hoping to overwhelm us. But he won't succeed, Alana said firmly. Not while we stand together. Aiden smiled, bolstered by her confidence. No, he won't. Let's keep pushing forward. Every training session, every fortified town, every ally rallied adds to our strength. The War Council reconvened under urgent circumstances, as scouts had just reported a series of fierce and unusually coordinated attacks on the outer villages. Aiden, Lyriel, Grukthar, and their top commanders gathered around the strategy table, each one ready to address the escalating threat. The attacks were more sophisticated than the usual skirmishes, reported a human scout, his face marked with the urgency of his news. It's as if the creatures were directed, perhaps even led. Aiden's jaw set firmly. Directed? That implies a level of strategic planning we haven't seen before. This has the Creator's handiwork all over it. Lyriel leaned over the map, pointing to the locations of the recent attacks. These villages are strategically placed. By hitting them, our enemy is trying to weaken our peripheral defenses before a larger assault. Grukthar slammed his fist onto the table, causing a few loose scrolls to jump. Then we strike back with equal cunning. We fortify these villages and lay traps. If they want a battle, we'll give them one they won't forget. Sir Cedric, who had been reviewing troop deployments, chimed in. We'll need to redeploy some of our forces. I suggest moving the 2nd Battalion to these points. They're well trained and can set up defensive positions quickly. Aiden nodded in agreement. Make it so, Sir Cedric, and get the Mage Corps to work with them. Any magical enhancements they can add to the defenses could make a significant difference. As they finalized their plans, Alana, who had been coordinating communications between the Council and their allies, received a new message. Word from our eastern allies, she announced, breaking into the conversation. They've observed similar patterns and are requesting aid. This confirms it. We're dealing with a coordinated effort across the region, Aiden concluded. We'll send reinforcements, but we also need to think about long-term strategies. This won't be the last we see of such tactics. Lyriel, ever the strategist, suggested, let's consider using decoys. If we can predict potential targets, we can set up fake supply routes or even ghost patrols. It might give us the upper hand in ambushing their forces. Grukthar grunted in approval. Deception in battle, a fine strategy. The meeting continued with each leader contributing their expertise, discussing everything from logistical challenges to the morale of their troops. As the plans grew more detailed, Aiden felt a mix of apprehension and determination. The Creator was indeed testing them, but they were responding with all the ingenuity and resilience they could muster. Before the council disbanded, Aiden stood and addressed the room. This is a critical moment for us. The Creator is pushing us, trying to see how far we can bend before we break. But as long as we stand together, support each other, and keep fighting with everything we've got, we will not break. We will endure, and we will overcome. Heads nodded around the table, the resolve in the room palpable. Each leader returned to their command, ready to implement the strategies they had discussed. The next few days were a blur of activity. Troops and supplies moved across the region, fortifications were bolstered, and the first decoy operations were set in motion. Aiden himself took to the field, leading from the front to inspire his forces and to see the execution of their plans firsthand. During one such operation, as Aiden and his team awaited the enemy in a carefully prepared ambush site, he turned to Lyriel. Do you think the Creator anticipated this? Lyriel, her eyes on the horizon, replied, perhaps. But expecting something and handling it are two different things. Let's show him how well we handle pressure. As if on cue, the first signs of the enemy appeared. The trap was sprung, and the battle began, a crucial test of their readiness and a chance to strike a significant blow against the forces driving the darkness. Aiden and Lyriel traversed the dense, enchanted woods that led to the secluded dwelling of Eldrin, an elf sorcerer of great renown. His mastery over the arcane was legendary, as were his reclusive habits. The path, known only to a few, twisted through ancient trees and over streams that whispered secrets. As they approached a clearing, where light seemed to gather around a modest, vine-draped cottage, Eldrin appeared. He was ageless, as elves often were, with eyes that shimmered with a depth of knowledge and power. Eldrin, I seek your training, Aiden began, his tone respectful. The threats we face grow ever darker, and I must strengthen my command over magic to protect those who fight beside me. Eldrin regarded Aiden with a penetrating gaze, his voice calm yet carrying an undercurrent of intensity. Magic is not a path to tread lightly, nor is it a mere tool for battle. It binds to the essence of one's being. What drives this desire for power? Aiden. Aiden met the sorcerer's gaze, his resolve clear. It's not power for its own sake I seek, but the means to defend against the Creator's manipulation. He challenges us with forces that we can only counter through magic. Eldrin nodded slowly, stepping aside to invite them into his home. Come, we will talk inside. Once seated around a low table inside the cottage, where the air was filled with the scent of pine and old parchment, Eldrin spoke again. To wield magic responsibly requires balance and understanding. If I teach you, you must also learn the weight of this power. Are you prepared to carry this burden? I am, Aiden replied, his voice steady. Whatever it takes. Eldrin's eyes narrowed slightly as he considered Aiden's words. Very well. We begin at dawn. Your training will be rigorous and demanding. Magic will test not just your mind, but your heart and soul. Lyriel, who had been quietly observing, added, He's ready, Eldrin. His commitment is true. Eldrin finally smiled, a small, knowing curve of his lips. Then let us see what mettle you truly possess, Aiden. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, your lessons in magic begin. As night fell, Aiden and Lyriel left the cottage to prepare. Under the stars, Aiden felt the weight of the upcoming challenges, but also a flicker of hope. Training with Eldrin was an opportunity he knew he must seize fully, not just for his own growth, but for the survival of all who relied on him. Lyriel, watching Aiden's contemplative expression, spoke softly. You have a rare determination, Aiden. It will serve you well. Aiden nodded, looking up at the starlit sky. I hope so, Lyriel. For all our sakes, I hope so. The first light of dawn filtered through the dense canopy of the enchanted forest, signaling the beginning of Aiden's rigorous training under Eldrin. They met in a clearing marked with ancient ruins and surrounded by towering oaks. The air was thick with the latent power of the place. Eldrin stood at the center of the clearing, a staff in his hand. Magic is the art of bending the energies of the world to your will. But first, you must learn to see these energies, he instructed, his voice echoing slightly in the morning stillness. Aiden nodded, his expression focused. How do I begin? Close your eyes. Reach out with your senses. Feel the life around you. The trees, the soil, the air. They all pulse with energy. Can you feel them? Eldrin's words were soft, but carried an intensity that made Aiden concentrate deeper. Aiden did as instructed, closing his eyes and reaching out with something other than his physical senses. At first, there was only the usual silence of his mind, but slowly, he began to perceive faint traces of something, like whispers on the wind. Yes, I think I can feel it, Aiden murmured, a note of surprise in his voice. Good. Now, open your eyes and try to see that energy. Eldrin stepped back, watching as Aiden focused. Aiden opened his eyes, and the world seemed different. The edges of things glowed faintly, and the air shimmered with unseen currents. It's like everything is alive, he said in awe. It is alive, and it speaks to those who listen. Now, let's harness some of that energy. Start with something simple. Try to lift that leaf without touching it. Eldrin pointed to a fallen leaf near Aiden's foot. Concentrating, Aiden extended his hand, his brow furrowed in concentration. After a moment, the leaf trembled and then hesitantly lifted into the air. Aiden's face broke into a grin as he watched it float. Very well done, Eldrin approved. But controlling magic is not just about moving leaves. It can defend, attack, and protect. Let's see how you handle something more challenging. The training intensified. Eldrin taught Aiden how to weave protective barriers, how to summon elements, and how to channel energy into blasts of force. Each lesson was more exhausting than the last, pushing Aiden to his limits and beyond. Focus, Aiden. Again, Eldrin's voice was strict as he pushed Aiden through the exercises. Aiden, sweating and tired, complied, summoning the last reserves of his energy to cast a barrier spell. This time, the air around him shimmered visibly, and when Eldrin cast a mild bolt of magic at him, it dispersed harmlessly against the shield. Well done. You're learning, Eldrin said, a hint of pride in his voice. But remember, the most powerful magic comes from within. Your strength, your will, your courage. These fuel your spells. As the days passed, Aiden's proficiency grew. He began to understand not just how to perform the spells, but why they worked, the principles behind the magic. It was both exhilarating and daunting. One evening, after a particularly strenuous session, Aiden and Eldrin sat by a small fire, the older elf looking thoughtful. You have made remarkable progress, Aiden. I believe you are ready to face the Creator's challenges with new strength. Aiden looked into the fire, considering his journey. I've learned much, Eldrin, but I know there's still so much more to understand. True mastery of magic is a lifelong pursuit, Eldrin replied, his eyes reflecting the flames. But you have a solid foundation now. Keep learning, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep your heart true. Aiden nodded, feeling both humbled and empowered. I will, Eldrin. Thank you for everything. The training ground was quiet, a cool morning mist swirling gently around Aiden and Eldrin as they faced each other for what was to be their final session together. Today's lesson was about control and finesse, mastering the craft not just through strength but through precision. Eldrin, holding a staff lightly in his hand, looked at Aiden with a stern but encouraging expression. Today, we will see how well you can integrate all that you have learned. You will attack me using any and all spells you deem necessary, and I will defend. Begin when you are ready. Aiden nodded, taking a deep breath to center himself. He began with a simple spell, a bolt of energy directed at Eldrin, who deflected it effortlessly with his staff. Good, Eldrin commented, but predictable. Show me more. Spurred on, Aiden switched tactics, weaving together a series of spells in rapid succession. Fire, wind, and earth. Flames danced at his fingertips, gusts of wind whipped around him, and the ground at Eldrin's feet rumbled threateningly. Eldrin countered each with graceful movements, his staff tracing intricate patterns in the air, breaking apart each elemental attack and redirecting the energies away from him. Excellent, Aiden. Now, combine them. Think synergistically, Eldrin instructed, not giving Aiden a moment to relax. Aiden paused, focusing deeper. He combined fire and wind, creating a swirling vortex of flames that moved faster and grew hotter as it neared Eldrin. This time, Eldrin took a step back, using more power to dissipate the fiery tornado. Yes, that's it. Again, Aiden, Eldrin encouraged, his eyes gleaming with approval. Aiden felt a surge of confidence. He extended both hands, drawing on the energy of the earth and air. Stones lifted from the ground, encircled by whirling gusts of wind, and flew towards Eldrin like a barrage of missiles. Eldrin's defense was swift, but the intensity of Aiden's attack clearly required him to exert significant effort. With a final, powerful wave of his staff, Eldrin neutralized the attack, panting slightly from the exertion. Very good, Aiden. Your control has improved remarkably. But remember, the true test of a mage is not how you attack, but how you protect and sustain, Eldrin said, now approaching Aiden. He placed his hand on Aiden's shoulder, looking him in the eye. Magic is power, but it is also responsibility. You've learned to harness great energies, but the wisdom to use them wisely is a lesson that will continue far beyond today. Aiden nodded, absorbing the weight of Eldrin's words. I understand. I will strive to use what you've taught me for protection. For good. As you should, Eldrin replied. And now, for your final lesson. Eldrin raised his staff, and the ground beneath him glowed with a soft light. Suddenly, Aiden felt a wave of energy coursing through him, enhancing his senses and deepening his connection to the magical forces around him. This is a ward of protection, a gift for your journey. It will guard you when darkness is close, and remind you of the light within, Eldrin explained as the light faded. Aiden felt empowered, not just by the magic, but by the trust and knowledge Eldrin had imparted. Thank you, Eldrin, for everything. Eldrin smiled, a rare expression that softened his usually serious features. Go now, Aiden. Use your abilities to forge a path to peace. Remember, magic is your tool, but your heart is your guide. In the shadowed enclave of an ancient forest grove, where the trees seemed to lean in and listen, Aiden stood before a diverse assembly of representatives from the various races of the realm. The air was thick with anticipation and the muted rustle of leaves. Aiden looked around the circle, his gaze passing over each leader. Thank you for gathering under these trying circumstances. Today, we face a common enemy who seeks not just to control us, but to reshape the very fabric of our realities, the Creator. Mira, an elven archer whose eyes mirrored the forest depths, stepped forward. Aiden, while your call brings us here, know that rebellion against a force such as the Creator carries risks unlike any we've faced. What makes you believe we can succeed? Aiden's voice was firm, yet infused with understanding. I believe not only in our combined might, but also in the power of our united will. We have seen how the Creator manipulates and divides. I say it's time we show him how we unite and fight back. Grukthar, an imposing orc warlord, with scars that told of many battles, grunted in agreement. The orc clans have suffered long under his shadow. We thirst for freedom and justice. But tell us, Aiden, how do you propose we ignite this rebellion without sparking our own destruction? Aiden nodded to Lyriel, who stepped forward with a scroll. Unfurling it, she revealed a detailed map marked with strategic locations and notes. We begin by undermining the Creator's influence covertly. We spread the seeds of dissent among those who serve him blindly. We sabotage his operations, and we protect those he would victimize. Sir Cedric, a human knight with a voice as steady as his sword arm, raised his hand. Subterfuge and protection are well and good, but they are passive measures. What of direct confrontation? Lyriel answered. Direct confrontations are inevitable, Sir Cedric. However, we must be strategic. We strike where we are strong, retreat where we are not, and always, we learn. This rebellion is as much about gaining strength as it is about wielding it. Balin, a dwarven engineer, stroked his thick beard thoughtfully. And what of supplies, weaponry, and magical resources? A rebellion does not live on courage alone. Aiden agreed. You are correct, Balin. We will need to secure supply lines and caches. Part of our initial phase involves rallying support from neutral parties and securing hidden arsenals. The discussion deepened, each leader contributing insights, resources, and concerns. They debated tactics, potential allies, and the phases of the rebellion. As the meeting drew to a close, Aiden stood once more. This is the beginning of our path to freedom. We stand together, not just as warriors, but as symbols of hope against a tyrant. Let us be the spark that lights the fire of rebellion." The leaders around him nodded, their faces set with determination. Mira stepped forward, her voice resonant in the quiet of the grove. "Then let it be so. We will return to our people and prepare. When the time comes, we will act as one, swiftly and decisively." Grukthar pounded his chest with a fist. "For freedom and vengeance, we will bring the Creator to his knees." As the group dispersed, the weight of their task seemed to settle on the grove like dew. Aiden and Lyriel lingered, their eyes meeting in silent acknowledgement of the challenge ahead. "We have set the course," Lyriel said softly. "May the winds be favorable." Aiden nodded, his resolve hardening. "They must be. For all our sakes, they must be." After the assembly dispersed, Aiden, Lyriel, and a select group of tactical advisors remained behind in the grove. They gathered around a large, detailed map spread out on a makeshift table, illuminated by the soft glow of enchanted lanterns. "All right, let's break this down into actionable steps," Aiden began, pointing to several key locations on the map. "We need to establish supply lines that are secure from the Creator's eyes and influence." "Balin, what are your thoughts on underground roads?" Balin, examining the map with a critical eye, responded, "There are old mining tunnels that run beneath the eastern ridge. With some reinforcement, they could serve as secure passageways for moving supplies and troops." Lyriel nodded, adding notes to a ledger. "I'll coordinate with the elves to ensure these tunnels are magically concealed." "Mira, can your scouts verify the safety of these routes?" Mira, still present via a magical communication device, replied crisply, "Consider it done. My scouts will map out the tunnels by week's end and report any vulnerabilities." Turning to Sir Cedric, Aiden asked, "And what of our human allies?" "We'll need more than just elven and dwarven support." Sir Cedric adjusted his sword belt thoughtfully. "I will speak with the various lords and ladies. Many are restless under the Creator's rule and will likely support our cause, especially if we can guarantee some degree of protection and eventual benefits from our victory." Grukthar, who had been quietly listening, then spoke up. "What of the orc clans? We are ready to fight, but many of us are scattered. We need a rallying point, a signal that it's time to unite and strike." Aiden considered this. "Let's use the ancient signal fires on Dragon's Peak. When the time comes, we'll light them as a sign for all our forces to begin their assault. It's visible across many of our territories." The group agreed, and Lyriel made a final note. "We have our plans, but we must also consider communication among our forces during the rebellion. We need a secure way to send messages without interception. I suggest using the coded scrolls and the network of trusted couriers we've already established," Aiden proposed. "Balin, can you ensure each courier is equipped with an escape plan and emergency protocols?" "Absolutely," Balin affirmed. "I'll provide them with smoke bombs and illusion kits. If they run into trouble, they'll be able to mask their escape or create diversions." With the main strategy set, the meeting concluded with each leader understanding their next steps. Aiden stood, feeling the weight of the upcoming rebellion balanced by the confidence in his team. "Thank you, everyone. These plans are more than just tactics. They're our hope. Let's proceed with caution and courage. We'll reconvene in 3 days to review our progress and make any necessary adjustments." As the group dispersed, Lyriel stayed behind, her expression thoughtful. "Aiden, are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no turning back." Aiden looked out towards the forest, the shadows of the night drawing long and deep. "I'm sure. It's time to change the course of our destiny. For too long, we've been reacting to the Creator's moves. Now, we set our own game." Lyriel nodded, her usual calm demeanor reassured by Aiden's resolve. "Then let's make sure it's a game we win." Together, they walked back through the forest, the plans they'd set in motion stirring like the whispering leaves around them, each step forward a move towards liberation. In the heart of the encampment, under the cover of twilight, Aiden stood before a gathered crowd of diverse warriors, elves, humans, orcs, and dwarves. His figure was silhouetted against the flickering light of campfires, casting long shadows on the faces of his attentive audience. Aiden raised his hands, commanding silence with his presence. "My friends, tonight, we stand on the precipice of a great undertaking. Together, we have laid the groundwork for a rebellion that will not only challenge the Creator's tyranny, but will also reclaim our freedom and our futures." Grukthar stepped forward, his voice booming across the assembly. "The orc clans stand ready. The fires of rebellion burn in our hearts, stoked by every injustice and every cruelty inflicted upon us by the Creator." Lyriel, standing by Aiden's side, spoke next, her voice clear and resonant. "The elves of the forest pledge their bows and their cunning. Our magic will protect and conceal our movements, as we strike swiftly and silently." Sir Cedric, representing the human factions, unsheathed his sword and held it aloft. "And we, the knights and warriors of the human realms, bring our strength and courage. We will shield our allies and uphold the banner of this rebellion with honor." Aiden looked around, meeting the eyes of many in the crowd, feeling their resolve and their readiness. "This unity, this incredible strength we've forged from our shared struggles, is our greatest weapon. The Creator may try to divide us, to turn us against each other. But as long as we stand together, we cannot be defeated. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, turning into a chorus of determined shouts and clashing weapons. But let us not be blinded by our fervor. This fight will demand more than just courage. It will require sacrifice, cunning, and endurance. Aiden continued, his tone shifting to one of solemnity. Each of you has a role to play. From the scouts who will bring us intelligence to the warriors who will face the enemy head-on, from the mages who will weave their spells to the healers who will save our wounded, every role is crucial. Balin, the dwarf, stepped forward, his sturdy frame belying his fierce spirit. And let us not forget those who work in the shadows and the forges, crafting the weapons and tools that will sustain our fight. We, the dwarves, pledge our hammers and our hearts to this cause. Aiden nodded in appreciation, then his gaze swept over the assembly once more. Tomorrow, we begin. Tonight, we prepare, not just in strategy, but in spirit. Look to your comrades, forge bonds that no magic can break, and remember why you fight. The gathering quieted, each individual reflecting on Aiden's words. Then, as if a silent signal had passed among them, the warriors began to gather in smaller groups, their voices low, sharing stories of their homes and their hopes. As the meetings dispersed, Lyriel leaned close to Aiden. You've done something remarkable, Aiden. You've turned a disparate group of rebels into a unified force with a common cause. Aiden smiled slightly, his eyes reflecting the flickering campfire light. We've all done it together, and we'll need every ounce of that unity in the days to come. The grand hall where the assembly convened was a testament to unity, adorned with symbols and artifacts representing each race. Aiden stood at the forefront, facing the gathering of diverse leaders seated around a massive oval table crafted from the woods of the elven forest and the stones of the dwarven mountains. Aiden cleared his throat, his voice echoing slightly in the vast chamber. Leaders, warriors, allies. Today, we stand together not just in resistance, but in defiance of the Creator who seeks to divide and conquer us. Here, in this hall, we forge a pact of unity that will become our shield against our common enemy. Mira, the elven representative, slender and poised, her voice smooth and persuasive, responded, while our unity forms our shield, our strategy will serve as our spear. We must discuss and devise a plan that plays to each of our strengths. Grekthar, the hulking orc warlord, clad in battle-worn armor, grunted in agreement. Talk is good, but action is better. The orcs are ready to fight, but we need to know where and how, not just why. Sir Cedric, a knight from the human kingdoms, adjusted his gauntlet before speaking. The human territories offer strategic fortifications and resources. We are prepared to share these, but we must coordinate our defenses effectively to protect all our lands. Aiden nodded, acknowledging each leader. Indeed. Sir Cedric, coordination and cooperation are why we are here. We must integrate our forces, combining our strengths to cover our weaknesses. I propose we begin by mapping out the key strategic locations vulnerable to the Creator's forces. Balin, the dwarf engineer, rolled out a detailed map across the table. The map showed various regions marked with potential risks and opportunities. Here, and here, Balin pointed. These are critical junctures. If we fortify these positions, we can control the movements of our enemies and protect our supply lines. Mira leaned over the map, tracing a path with her finger. The elven archers can patrol these forests, providing reconnaissance and early warning of any approaching threats. Our magic users can also work to shield these paths from prying eyes. Grekthar banged his fist on the table, making several representatives jump. And the orc warriors can fortify the front lines. Give us the hardest-hitting tasks. We'll hold the lines with our strength. Sir Cedric chimed in. While the orcs hold the line, the human cavalry can remain mobile, ready to support any breaches in our defenses or to counterattack when the opportunity arises. Aiden looked around the table, seeing nods and hearing murmurs of agreement. Excellent proposals, all. Let's detail these strategies, assigning specific tasks and roles. We also need to establish a chain of command that respects each race's autonomy while ensuring unified action. The discussions grew intense, each leader passionately advocating for their people's roles and capabilities. Aiden facilitated the debate, guiding the assembly towards a consensus on the best use of their collective resources. As the meeting drew to a close, Aiden stood once again. Thank you, everyone, for your insights and commitment. Let us move forward from this day, not as separate races, but as allies bound by a common cause. We will meet again soon to finalize our plans and prepare for the inevitable confrontation with the Creator. The leaders stood, some with solemn nods, others with determined looks. They had come as representatives of their people, but they were leaving as coordinators of a united front. As the chamber slowly emptied, Lyriel approached Aiden, her expression thoughtful. That went well, though the road ahead is fraught with peril. Aiden smiled wryly. Indeed, it is, but with unity comes strength. Lyriel, with these leaders by our side, we have a fighting chance. After the initial discussions had set the tone for cooperation, Aiden reconvened the assembly to focus on the tactical integration of their combined forces. The Grand Hall buzzed with a collaborative spirit as representatives from each race huddled around various maps and scrolls. Aiden stood at the head of the table, pointing to a large map spread out before them. Let's delve into the specifics of our strategy. Balin has proposed several key fortification points. Let's discuss how best to defend these areas using our collective resources. Balin, the dwarf, chimed in. The first point is here, at the Valley of Kings. It's a narrow pass that can be easily defended by a small force if properly fortified. I suggest we station a unit of dwarf engineers to build defenses and an elven magic contingent to conceal them. Mira, the elven representative, nodded in agreement. Our mages can cast veiling spells to hide the fortifications and any troop movements. However, we'll need regular updates on enemy movements to adjust our spells accordingly. Grukthar grunted, scratching his scarred chin. Orc warriors can patrol the area. We're good at spotting trouble. Plus, our presence alone might deter smaller raiding parties. Sir Cedric, representing the humans, added, the human cavalry will be crucial here. We can provide rapid response support to any of the fortification points should they come under attack. Our mobility will be our advantage. Aiden looked around, pleased with the productive exchange. Excellent. Let's assign specific units and leaders to each role by the end of today. Next, we need to discuss supply lines. Ensuring our fortifications are well supplied is critical. Lyriel, who had been coordinating logistical support, spoke up. I propose using the underground river paths for transporting supplies. It's safer and less likely to be discovered by enemy scouts. The dwarves can help us ensure the routes are secure and stable. Balin nodded enthusiastically. Indeed, we can reinforce the tunnels and even set traps for unwelcome visitors. I'll draft a plan for the routes and submit it for approval. Mira then raised a point of concern. While we focus on fortifications and supply lines, we must not neglect intelligence gathering. Knowing the creator's moves in advance could be the difference between victory and defeat. Aiden agreed wholeheartedly. Absolutely. Mira, let's expand our network of scouts and spies. Lyriel, perhaps you and Mira can work together to develop a more robust intelligence operation? Lyriel and Mira exchanged a determined look. We'll start immediately, Lyriel responded. Our combined networks can cover vast areas, and with the right magical enhancements, we can keep our communications secure. As the meeting progressed, each leader detailed their contributions, discussing logistics, troop movements, and contingency plans. The atmosphere was one of determined collaboration, with each race bringing its strengths to the fore. Finally, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the stained glass windows of the hall, Aiden stood to address the group once more. Your commitment today reinforces my belief that together, we can defy the Creator and protect our world. Let's move forward with the plans we've laid out. We will reconvene in 2 days to finalize everything and begin deployments. The leaders rose, exchanging nods and words of encouragement with one another. As they left the hall, their conversations continued, a buzz of strategic excitement filling the air. Grukthar lingered behind, approaching Aiden with a rare smile. This plan, it's good. We fight better when we fight together. Aiden clapped Grukthar on the shoulder, returning the smile. Yes, we do. Thanks to all of you. We're not just fighting, we're leading a charge. As the last of the afternoon light faded from the Grand Hall, Aiden prepared to solidify the commitments made during the day's extensive planning sessions. Around the long, oak table, leaders from each allied race gathered, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of candles, each one ready to formalize their unity against the Creator. Aiden cleared his throat, his voice carrying a weight of solemnity and hope. Today, we have laid down not just strategies but also the foundation of our shared commitment to protect our world and defy the tyranny of the Creator. It is time we seal our pact with more than just words. Lyriel, standing beside him, unrolled a large scroll. The parchment was inscribed with the terms of their alliance, meticulously drafted to honor each race's contributions and responsibilities. This pact of unity is a testament to our resolve. By signing this, we pledge to stand together, share our burdens, and fight as one. Grukthar was the first to step forward, his large hand grasping a quill. The orc clans were among the first to suffer under the Creator's rule. We will be the first to sign against him. With a decisive motion, he signed the pact, his name a bold, jagged line across the parchment. Mira followed, her movements graceful and precise. The elves of the forest do not enter into agreements lightly, but this cause is just, and our commitment is absolute. Her signature flowed elegantly below Grukthar's, a stark contrast in styles that yet complemented each other beautifully. Sir Cedric, representing the human kingdoms, took the quill next. In the name of all human realms that yearn for freedom and peace, I sign this pact. His signature was firm and steady, each letter crafted with the seriousness of his vow. Finally, Balin approached, his shorter stature no reflection of his significant presence. The dwarves are known for our steadfastness. Our word, like our craftsmanship, is unbreakable. His signature was robust and unyielding, etched into the parchment as if carved in stone. With the formalities observed, Aiden took the quill and added his own signature to the pact. As a representative of all free people standing against the Creator, I pledge to lead with honor and integrity. The leaders stepped back, their signatures completed, and Aiden held up the scroll for all to see. This pact of unity binds us not just in battle but in spirit and purpose. Let it be known that on this day, we chose to stand together against a common foe. Lyriel then took the scroll, her eyes meeting those of each leader in turn. We will keep this document in the Hall of Alliance, a new structure at the crossroads of our territories, where it will be guarded and honored. The assembly nodded in agreement, a sense of accomplishment filling the room. Mira spoke softly, yet her voice carried through the hall. May this pact remind us of our duty and our hope. Together, we have begun a journey that will change the course of history. As the meeting concluded, the leaders mingled, discussing the future and the challenges ahead. There was a palpable sense of unity, a shared strength that seemed to fortify the very walls of the hall. Aiden and Lyriel lingered a moment longer, looking over the signed pact. We've done something remarkable today, Lyriel noted, a hint of awe in her voice. Yes, Aiden agreed, his gaze thoughtful. Now we must prove worthy of the trust placed in this alliance. The real work begins. In the dimly lit war council tent, Aiden reviewed the troop movements with his commanders. The map on the table was dotted with flags and markers, illustrating the precarious balance of power. Reinforcements here, Aiden pointed, and here. If we lose these points, the central territories are exposed. As the group murmured in agreement, Sir Cedric cleared his throat, a serious expression shadowing his features. Aiden, there's another matter we need to address immediately. I believe we have a traitor in our ranks. The tent fell silent, the weight of the accusation hanging heavily in the air. Aiden's gaze sharpened. A traitor? Are you certain of this? Cedric, accusations like these can fracture our alliance. Cedric nodded gravely, his hand resting on a stack of intercepted messages. Yes, I'm certain. We've decoded enough from these messages to know that someone close to us is leaking vital information to the Creator. Aiden felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. Do we have any leads on who it might be? Not yet, Cedric replied, spreading the intercepted messages on the table. But we need to act swiftly to tighten security and identify the culprit before more damage is done. Balin, the stout dwarf engineer, chimed in, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. We must consider everyone's movements and contacts. No one could be above suspicion, not even those who've been with us from the start. Lyriel, her expression tense, added, I'll coordinate with our intelligence teams to surveil communications and movements within the camp. We'll need to be discreet. The last thing we want is to alert the traitor that we're onto them. Aiden nodded, his jaw set firmly. Do whatever it takes, Lyriel. We can't afford any leaks. Not now, when every move is crucial. Grukthar, the massive orc leader, slammed his fist into his other hand, his eyes blazing with anger. Let me deal with the traitor once they're found. They'll regret betraying us. Justice will be done, but it must be just, Aiden said, locking eyes with Grukthar. We'll handle this the right way, according to our laws. As the meeting concluded, Aiden remained behind, staring at the map, his mind racing. The betrayal was a poison, seeping doubt and fear into the heart of their alliance. He couldn't let it destabilize their efforts, not when so much was at stake. Later that evening, Aiden walked alone outside the tent, pondering the day's revelations. The cool night air did little to ease the turmoil within him. As he passed a secluded part of the camp, Lyriel's voice broke his reverie. Aiden, she called softly from the shadows. We need to talk. There's more you should know. He turned to find her approaching, a sheaf of papers in her hand. What is it? Lyriel, what have you found? She handed him the documents, her face grave. I've uncovered evidence that suggests the traitor might be someone from Grukthar's cadre. Not necessarily him, but someone close. Aiden scanned the documents quickly, his heart sinking as he connected the dots. This could tear us apart. Grukthar's warriors are key to our frontline defenses. We need to confront this carefully, Lyriel advised, her voice low. Accusing someone without irrefutable proof could lead to an internal conflict we cannot afford. Aiden looked up, determination stealing his features. Prepare a discreet investigation. We'll get to the bottom of this quietly. Until then, we proceed as planned, but with increased vigilance. Understood. Lyriel nodded, slipping back into the darkness to carry out her tasks. A few tense days passed after the revelation of a potential traitor within their ranks. The atmosphere in the camp was charged with suspicion and caution, as Aiden, Lyriel, and their closest advisors worked tirelessly to uncover the traitor's identity without causing panic among the troops. Late one evening, in a secluded area of the camp, Lyriel met Aiden with urgent news. The shadows of the night seemed to press in around them, thickening with the gravity of her discovery. Aiden, Lyriel began, her voice low and strained. We've confirmed the traitor's identity. It's Grukthar. We caught him sending encrypted messages to the Creator's forces. Aiden felt as if the ground had dropped away beneath him. Grukthar, he echoed, disbelief and betrayal warring within him. Are you sure? Yes, Lyriel replied, handing him a sheaf of intercepted messages along with their decrypted contents. We've had our suspicions, but now we have proof. He's been providing the Creator with our plans, troop movements, even our supply routes. The revelation hit Aiden like a physical blow. Grekthar had fought beside him for years, shared meals, and stories around countless campfires. To think he was capable of such deceit was almost too much to bear. What do we do now? Aiden asked, his voice heavy. We confront him, publicly, Lyriel suggested. Expose his treachery in front of the troops. It will send a clear message. No one is above the law. Aiden nodded grimly. Arrange it. First thing tomorrow at dawn. We'll do it in the central square. The next morning, as the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and orange, the entire camp gathered in the central square. The air was tense, filled with the murmur of confused soldiers and the clanking of armor as people jostled for a better view. Grekthar was brought forth in chains, his expression defiant. Aiden stepped forward, the decrypted messages in hand, and addressed the crowd. Today, we stand betrayed, Aiden announced, his voice carrying across the silent square. Grekthar, whom we trusted as a brother in arms, has conspired with our greatest enemy. He has endangered every single one of us for his own gain. Grekthar sneered, his voice booming as he interrupted Aiden. Yes, I did it. And I'd do it again. The Creator promised me power beyond your petty rebellion. He sees my true worth. The crowd erupted in angry shouts, the sense of betrayal palpable in the air. Aiden raised his hands, calling for silence. Grekthar's fate will be decided according to our laws, Aiden declared, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. But let his betrayal be a lesson to us all. We must remain vigilant, united, and strong. As the guards led Grekthar away, Aiden turned to Lyriel. Keep a close watch on the troops. We need to ensure there's no further dissent. Lyriel nodded, her face somber. I'll see to it personally. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity, with Aiden and his advisors reinforcing camp security and reevaluating their plans in light of the breach. But even as they worked to shore up their defenses, Aiden couldn't shake the feeling that the damage done might be irreparable. That night, as Aiden reviewed reports in his tent, the world suddenly went white. The familiar sensation of the time loop resetting washed over him, leaving him disoriented and despairing. When he regained his senses, he was back at the starting point, the camp pristine and unaware of the betrayal that had just unfolded. The loop had reset, but the conditions were now more dire, with their forces diminished and the enemy emboldened by Grekthar's leaked intelligence. Aiden clenched his fists, his resolve hardening. This time, he whispered to the empty tent, I will be ready. We will not be betrayed again. The camp was somber under the weight of recent events as Aiden stood before his commanders and key advisors in the war tent. The air was tense, reflecting the gravity of the betrayal they had uncovered and the palpable shift in morale. Aiden addressed the group, his voice carrying a mix of resolve and weariness. The betrayal by Grekthar has set us back significantly. Not only have we lost a leader, but our enemy now knows too much about our operations. We must assess the damage and adapt quickly. Lyriel, standing to his side, unfolded a map across the table, dotted with red pins indicating compromised positions. Here, and here, these are the areas Grekthar has exposed. We can assume the Creator will strike these points first. We need to reposition our forces and strengthen our defenses immediately. Sir Cedric, clad in his battle-worn armor, leaned over the map. I suggest pulling back from the outer defenses to form a tighter, more secure perimeter around the central territories. We'll be more compact but stronger. Balin, his brows furrowed in thought, added, and our engineering corps can rig the abandoned outposts with traps. If they're going to take them, let's make sure they pay dearly. Aiden considered their suggestions, nodding slowly. Implement these changes at once. Also, increase surveillance and double our night patrols. If the Creator is planning a move, I want to know about it before it happens. As they set about issuing new orders, the atmosphere was one of hurried activity, each leader keenly aware of the stakes. However, as they worked, the world around them began to shimmer, the familiar yet always startling prelude to a reset. The colors and sounds of the tent faded into a blinding white light. Aiden felt the now familiar sensation of time unwinding, pulling him back to the start of the loop. When his senses returned, he was standing in the exact spot where the assembly had first learned of Grekthar's betrayal days. Or was it moments? No. Aiden clenched his fists, frustration and determination mingling in his expression. He looked around. The camp was bustling as if nothing had happened. None of the adjustments had been made. None of the lessons had been learned. They were back to where they started, only worse off with a traitor in their midst and an enemy forewarned. Gathering his composure, Aiden summoned Lyriel and his commanders once more. We are in a loop, but our situation has changed drastically. We must act swiftly to mitigate the damage. This time, we must prevent the betrayal before it can happen and prepare for an imminent attack. Lyriel nodded, already stepping into action. I'll gather the intelligence officers and ensure our communications are secure. We'll also need to discreetly observe Grekthar's activities from the outset. Sir Cedric added, I'll reorganize the patrols and prepare the men for a potential early strike. We'll be ready. Aiden looked each of them in the eye, his voice firm. We know what's coming now. Let's use that knowledge. We can't change the past, but we can certainly shape the future. This loop gives us another chance to set things right, and we will not waste it. As they dispersed to carry out their tasks, Aiden stayed back, contemplating the looping world in which they were trapped. Each reset was a test, a challenge to be smarter, faster, and stronger. He knew the Creator was watching, perhaps even amused by their plight. The scene was set deep within the ancient dwarven forges, where the constant thrum of hammers and the roar of fires filled the cavernous space. Aiden, accompanied by Balin, walked past rows of busy smiths, their faces illuminated by the fierce glow of molten metal. As they reached a quieter corner of the forge, Balin gestured towards a large, intricately drawn schematic spread across a heavy stone table. Here it is, Aiden, the blueprint for the Aegis of Arden, a magical artifact designed specifically to counteract the Creator's dark magic. Aiden leaned in, examining the detailed plans. It looks complex. How exactly does it work? Balin picked up a piece of chalk and pointed to various components on the schematic. The Aegis will be composed of several rare materials, each chosen for their inherent magical properties. But its core will be the Heartstone, capable of absorbing and nullifying dark magic. Aiden looked thoughtful. Absorbing dark magic? That's a hefty claim. Are we sure the Heartstone can handle such power? Theoretically, yes, Balin replied. But it's never been attempted on this scale. That's where you come in. We need someone with your unique magical abilities to help channel and stabilize the energy during the forging process. Aiden nodded, understanding the weight of the task. I see. What's the first step? We need to procure the Heartstone, which is currently located in the Cavern of Echoes, guarded by a creature of old magic, Balin explained, marking the location on a smaller map beside the blueprint. And the other materials? Aiden asked, scanning the list on the blueprint. Already on their way, Balin assured him. Dwarven caravans are bringing in star metal from the northern mines and wraith silver from the Sunken Isles. But the Heartstone is the linchpin of the entire artifact. Aiden stood, resolute. Then let's not waste any time. Lead the way, Balin. The two set off towards the Cavern of Echoes, the journey fraught with the anticipation of the task ahead. As they walked, Balin continued to elaborate on the forging process. Once we have all the materials, the actual forging must take place here, in the Heart Forge, the only forge powerful enough to meld such potent magical elements. Aiden, listening intently, finally said, and if this works, if we manage to create the Aegis, what then? How do we use it against the Creator? Balin glanced at Aiden, his expression serious. The Aegis itself will be a formidable tool, capable of shielding us from direct magical attacks. But more importantly, it will symbolize our ability to stand against the Creator. It will give hope to those who fear his power. As they neared the entrance to the Cavern of Echoes, the air grew cooler, and the light dimmed. Aiden felt a surge of energy coursing through him, a mix of apprehension and excitement. This is it, Balin said as they stood before the cavern entrance, the darkness looming like a gaping maw. Ready yourself, Aiden. What lies ahead will test both your courage and your magical prowess. The next phase of their quest found Aiden, Balin, and a small, select team of adventurers at the entrance of the forgotten cave known to house the Heartstone. The cave, shrouded in myths and guarded by a slumbering dragon, was notorious for its dangers. Balin briefed the team one last time before entering. The Heartstone is located in the deepest chamber of this cave. Our biggest challenge, apart from retrieving the stone itself, will be to avoid waking the dragon that guards it. Aiden, adjusting his armor, nodded to Lyriel, who was checking her bow and arrows. Stay alert, everyone. If that dragon wakes, we'll need to be ready to move quickly. They proceeded cautiously into the cave, their path lit only by the faint glow of enchanted torches. The air was cool and damp, filled with the heavy scent of earth and something faintly acrid, dragon breath. As they reached the chamber, they saw the Heartstone, glowing softly on a pedestal in the center of the room. The dragon lay curled around it, its scales shimmering in the torchlight. Mira, the elven archer, whispered, I can use a sleep arrow to ensure it stays asleep if it stirs. Let's be quick and silent. Aiden nodded, and together with Balin, approached the pedestal. As Aiden reached out to grasp the Heartstone, his hand trembling slightly, the dragon shifted, a low growl rumbling through the chamber. Holding his breath, Aiden quickly but gently lifted the Heartstone from its resting place. The dragon's eyes flickered open, and Mira instantly let loose a sleep arrow, striking it in the neck. The beast's eyes fluttered shut again, its breathing deepening. With the Heartstone securely in his pack, Aiden signaled to the group, and they hurried out of the chamber. Once they were safely outside the cave, Balin let out a long breath. Well done, everyone. Let's head to the ancient elven temple next. The journey to the elven ruins was uneventful but tense, as they anticipated further challenges. Upon arrival, they found the temple overtaken by nature, vines and moss draping the ancient stone structures. Mira took the lead, her familiarity with elven magic guiding them through hidden traps and collapsing pathways. The star metal should be in the sanctum, she explained, leading the way to a partially collapsed dome. Inside, The air was thick with the magic of ages past. The star metal lay encased in a crystal formation on the altar. Aiden approached it, feeling the hum of ancient power. As I feared, the star metal is protected by a spell, Mira noted, examining the runes around the base of the crystal. I'll need a moment to disarm it. As Mira chanted softly, the crystal's glow waned, and Aiden, with a nod from Mira, reached in and retrieved the star metal. It was surprisingly light, its surface cool and smooth to the touch. With both the heartstone and the star metal secured, the team made their way back to the dwarven forges. Balin was already discussing the next steps as they walked. Once we're back, we'll begin the forging process immediately. Time is not on our side. Aiden, clutching the bag containing the heartstone, felt the weight of their mission. Let's hope these components are enough to turn the tide against the creator. As they entered the forges, the heat and noise of the smithy were a stark contrast to the silent, magical places they had just left. Balin clapped Aiden on the back. We're ready to start forging? This is where we bring our fight to the creator. Back in the dwarven forges, with the heartstone and star metal securely in their possession, Aiden, Balin, and the team of mastersmiths prepared for the crucial phase of their mission. The air was thick with the heat of the forge in anticipation of the task ahead. Balin, overseeing the preparations, addressed the gathered smiths and mages. We stand at a pivotal moment. The Aegis of Arden could turn the tide against the creator. Let's begin. Aiden stepped forward, the components in hand. I'm ready. Tell me what I need to do. Balin pointed to a large, rune-inscribed anvil at the center of the forge. Place the heartstone and the star metal on the anvil. We'll start by merging these elements using a combination of dwarven craftsmanship and your magical energies. Aiden placed the materials on the anvil, and the smiths encircled the platform, their hammers ready. Balin nodded to a mage, who began chanting softly, the air around the anvil shimmering with gathering magical power. Now, Aiden, Balin instructed, focus your energy on the heartstone. Envision it binding with the star metal, forming an impenetrable shield. Aiden closed his eyes, extending his hands toward the anvil. He concentrated, channeling his energy as Eldrin had taught him, feeling the heat of the forge and the cool power of the heartstone merging with the celestial quality of the star metal. The forge's atmosphere intensified, the temperature rising as the elements on the anvil began to glow. The heartstone pulsed with light, and the star metal melted around it, their essences intertwining. Balin, watching closely, shouted over the roar of the forge. Now, smiths! Hammer now! The smiths brought down their hammers in unison, rhythmic and forceful. Each strike sent sparks flying, each impact resonating with the chant of the mage, weaving a powerful spell of binding and protection. The process was grueling. Sweat poured down Aiden's face as he maintained his magical focus, his arms trembling with the effort of channeling so much power. As the final hammer stroke fell, the light from the anvil exploded in a brilliant flash, momentarily blinding everyone in the room. When the light subsided, there on the anvil lay the Aegis of Arden, glowing softly, its new form a perfect blend of the heartstone and star metal. Balin stepped forward, his face awash with awe and relief. We've done it, he breathed, lifting the Aegis carefully. Look at it, Aiden. It's more beautiful and powerful than I'd hoped. Aiden, exhausted but elated, reached out to touch the Aegis. The shield felt warm, pulsing with a life of its own. It feels right, he said, a smile breaking through his fatigue. Like it was meant to be this way. The group gathered around, admiring the craftsmanship and the magic that had gone into creating such an artifact. Balin handed the Aegis back to Aiden. This is yours to wield, Aiden. Lead us to victory. Break the creator's hold on our world. As the forge's doors opened, and the cool air mingled with the heat of the fires, Aiden held the Aegis aloft. With this shield, we will protect our lands and our people. To battle, my friends, for freedom and for the future. In the shadowed, cavernous depths of Mount Eldar, Aiden and his small band of companions trudged up the steep, winding path that led to the lair of Sultharion, the ancient dragon known for its wisdom and enigmatic nature. The air was chill, laden with the echoes of a world seldom touched by human presence. Aiden paused at the entrance of the cavern, his eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering through the cracks in the stone. Turning to Lyriel and the others, he spoke with a firm resolve. Stay here. If the legends are true, Sultharion will not take kindly to a crowd. I must go alone. Lyriel nodded, her hand resting on her bow. Be careful, Aiden. Dragons are unpredictable, and Sultharion is said to be as cunning as he is old. With a reassuring nod, Aiden stepped into the cavern, his boots echoing softly against the smooth stone floor. The deeper he went, the cooler and denser the air became, until at last, he reached the vast chamber where Sultharion was said to reside. Sultharion, ancient and wise, Aiden called into the darkness, his voice steady but loud enough to carry through the vast chamber. I am Aiden, a seeker of knowledge and ally to those who oppose the Creator. I come seeking your wisdom. The silence that followed was palpable, filled with the weight of centuries. Then, a deep, resonant voice filled the chamber, as if arising from the very stones beneath his feet. Why does a mortal seek the counsel of Sultharian? What is it that you hope to find here, in the darkness? Aiden stepped forward, his eyes straining to catch a glimpse of the dragon. I seek understanding about the Creator, his origins and his weaknesses. Our world is under threat, and without this knowledge, we will fail. The shadows shifted, and two glowing eyes emerged from the darkness, reflecting like twin stars. Curiosity and bravery, a rare mix. Very well, approach, but keep your intentions clear, and your heart pure, or face the consequences. With cautious steps, Aiden approached the source of the voice. As he drew closer, the figure of Sultharian became clearer, massive, with scales that shimmered with the hues of the deep earth. What do you know of the Creator, young one? Sultharian's voice was now a low rumble, vibrating through the ground. He is a being of immense power, one who has rewritten the very fabric of reality to suit his desires. But his rule is tyrannical, and his methods cruel. We seek to end his reign, Aiden explained, his voice echoing slightly in the cavern. Powerful indeed, Sultharian mused, his eyes narrowing, but not invincible. His strength is also his flaw. He is bound to the laws he has set, the magic he wields. Understand these, and you will find your path. And how can I understand these laws? Aiden asked, his heart beating fast with anticipation. Sultharian's tail swept across the stone floor, sending small rocks skittering. That knowledge is not given lightly, nor is it easy to bear. But since you have come this far, I will guide you. Listen closely and remember, the power to bind is also the power to break. Inside the cavernous lair, under the watchful, ancient eyes of Sultharian, Aiden stood ready to absorb the wisdom that might tip the scales in their desperate fight. The air felt charged, heavy with the promise of secrets long held. Aiden, feeling the magnitude of the moment, addressed the dragon with a deep respect. Sultharian, you mentioned that the Creator's strength is also his flaw. Can you elaborate on what that means? How did he come to wield such power? Sultharian's great head lowered slightly, the glow from his eyes illuminating patches of the dark cavern. Long before your kind walked these lands, the Creator was a scholar, a being of intellect and ambition. He delved into the arcane arts, seeking to understand the fabric of creation itself. Aiden listened intently, each word painting a broader picture of their foe. What did he discover that gave him such power? The Creator found a rift, a tear in the very essence of reality, Sultharian explained, his voice deep and resonant. Through this rift, he gained the ability to manipulate the laws of nature, to bend them to his will. It was this power that corrupted him, drove him to see himself as a deity. Aiden's mind raced, understanding the gravity of such power. Is it possible to counteract or undo the changes he's made? It is possible, Sultharian continued, shifting slightly, the scales on his body clinking like armor. The laws he bent are not broken. They can still be realigned, but it would require a force equal in power and opposite in intention. And how would we find or create such a force? Aiden asked, the possibility igniting a spark of hope. The dragon's eyes seemed to pierce into Aiden's very soul. That is a journey you must undertake, a quest for balance and restoration. Begin by seeking the rift itself. Understanding its nature will lead you to the solution. Aiden nodded, his resolve hardening. I will find it. Sultharian, with your guidance, we will set things right. The dragon nodded slowly, a gesture of approval. Be wary, young one. The path is perilous, and the Creator will not easily part with the source of his power. Seek allies, both old and new, and trust in the balance of all things. Thank you, Sultharian, for sharing your wisdom. I will return, hopefully with news of our progress, Aiden said, bowing deeply. As Aiden turned to leave, Sultharian spoke once more. Remember, the strength of many may need to converge on the weakness of one. Gather your forces wisely, and strike with precision. With those final words echoing in his ears, Aiden exited the dragon's lair, feeling the weight of his quest yet empowered by the knowledge he had gained. He rejoined Lyriel and the others, who waited anxiously outside. Lyriel looked at him questioningly. What did you learn? Aiden shared the dragon's insights as they descended the mountain. We have a direction now. We must find the rift and understand how to realign the laws the Creator has bent. It's our best chance to end his tyranny. After the enlightening conversation with Sultharian, Aiden and Lyriel prepared to leave the cavern. The gravity of their newfound knowledge weighed heavily on them, shaping their next steps. Before we depart, Aiden, Sultharian's voice rumbled softly, causing them to pause. There is one final lesson I must impart, a lesson about the nature of power and sacrifice. Aiden turned to face the ancient dragon, his expression solemn. I am ready to learn. Sultharian, the power that the Creator wields was not meant for mortals. It bends not just the physical world, but also the soul, Sultharian explained, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the cave. To counter such power, you may be called upon to make sacrifices that will test the very essence of your being. Lyriel interjected, with a concerned look at Aiden. What kind of sacrifices are you speaking of? The kind that may change the course of your destiny, Sultharian replied, shifting its massive form slightly. True power, the kind that can realign the corrupted laws, demands a balance. You may need to give up something of equal value. Aiden nodded slowly, understanding the implications. And if I am prepared to make such a sacrifice, how will I know what is required? It will become clear when the time comes, the dragon assured him. The rift itself will demand it. Be prepared to listen and to act without hesitation. The weight of the decision loomed large, but Aiden felt a resolve firming within him. Thank you, Sultharian, for your wisdom and your warnings. As they turned to leave, Sultharian spoke once more. Remember, Aiden, that all power is a test. How you wield it and what you choose to sacrifice will define not just your own fate, but the fate of all. With those parting words echoing in their ears, Aiden and Lyriel exited the cavern, the cool mountain air brisk against their faces as they descended back towards their camp. The journey down was quiet, each step punctuated by their deep thoughts on the challenges and sacrifices that lay ahead. Back at camp, as they gathered with their closest allies around a crackling fire, Aiden shared the insights from Sultharian. The group listened intently, the firelight casting flickering shadows over their determined faces. We've learned much, Aiden began, his voice tinged with both hope and solemnity. But the path ahead is fraught with choices that will demand more from us than we may be prepared to give. Mira, the elven strategist, leaned forward, her eyes sharp. We are with you, Aiden. Whatever the sacrifices, we must face them together. The fate of our world hangs in the balance. Balin nodded in agreement, his expression grave. And we dwarves know a thing or two about sacrifice. You'll have our axes when the time comes. The conversation continued into the night, plans being made and strategies formed. Aiden felt bolstered by the support of his friends and allies. Together, they would face whatever the rift demanded. They would stand united, ready to do whatever was necessary to restore balance and end the Creator's reign. In the dimly lit command tent, Aiden and his commanders huddled around a large map strewn with markers and figurines representing their troops and the looming undead threat. The atmosphere was thick with tension, each report from the scouts adding weight to the air. Aiden, pointing at the map, addressed the room. Our scouts report massive movements from the undead near the Valley of Shadows. They're amassing in numbers we haven't seen before. It's an organized assault. Ideas? Before anyone could respond, a scout rushed in, breathless. Commander Aiden, sir, I've just come from the northern lookout. The undead forces are moving faster than expected. They could reach our defenses by nightfall. Aiden's gaze sharpened as he processed the news. Balin, how quickly can your engineers fortify our existing defenses? Balin, a seasoned dwarf with a knack for quick thinking under pressure, responded without hesitation. We can reinforce the main gates and critical wall sections within hours. I'll need every able hand we can spare, though. Lyriel, her expression serious, chimed in. I'll coordinate with the archers and mages. We need a layered defense. Archers to thin their ranks and mages to handle any breaches with targeted spells. Aiden nodded, turning his attention to Sir Cedric, who commanded the cavalry. Cedric, position your riders on the flanks. If any of the undead break through the main defenses, I want you to sweep in and drive them back. Sir Cedric, a veteran knight with countless battles under his belt, acknowledged the order with a curt nod. Understood, Commander. We'll be ready to react at a moment's notice. Turning to the room at large, Aiden's voice took on a commanding tone. This is more than just another skirmish. It's a calculated attack. They're testing our defenses and our resolve. But we are not merely defenders. We are protectors of these lands. Let's show them that our walls are not so easily breached. The commanders quickly dispersed to rally their troops and execute their assigned tasks. Aiden lingered for a moment, studying the map with a strategic eye. Every troop placement and every barrier mattered now more than ever. As he was about to leave, Mira, the elven strategist, approached him. Aiden, the undead have never organized like this. It's possible they're being directed by a greater power. Perhaps the Creator himself is involved. Aiden considered this, his jaw setting firmly. Keep a close watch on any unusual activities or patterns in their assault. If the Creator is indeed pulling the strings, we need to be prepared for anything. Mira nodded, her eyes flickering with a mix of determination and concern. I will. We all will. With that, Aiden stepped out of the tent and made his way to the battlements, where he could see the first of the undead forces approaching in the distance. The setting sun cast long shadows over the field, the advancing enemy a dark wave about to crash against their fortifications. Positions! Aiden shouted, drawing his sword and setting his shield. The defenders rallied to his call, forming up with grim resolve. The battle raged under a darkening sky as the undead swarmed the walls of the fortress with relentless vigor. Aiden, stationed at the central battlement, shouted orders over the chaos of clashing metal and the groans of the undead. Archers, aim for their leaders. Mages, I need a barrier on the east wing now, Aiden commanded, his voice cutting through the tumult. Next to him, Lyriel swiftly notched and released arrows in quick succession, each finding its mark with deadly precision. The eastern flank is faltering, she called out, eyes narrowed as she took in the scene below. Balin, covered in soot and sweat, emerged from beneath the ramparts, where he had been reinforcing the gates. We've shored up the gates, but these creatures are relentless. We need more firepower here. Aiden glanced towards Sir Cedric, who was coordinating a cavalry charge to repel a group of undead that had almost breached the main gate. Cedric, after your sweep, reinforce the east side. Yes, Commander, Sir Cedric called back, steering his horse back into the fray, his knights following in a thunderous charge. The ground shook as mages conjured spells, casting bursts of fire and ice into the ranks of the undead, slowing their advance but not stopping it. Aiden watched the battlefield, calculating their chances with each passing moment. Mira? Status. Aiden shouted over to the elven strategist who was aiding the archers. Mira, her face set in grim determination, shouted back, We're holding, but it's a temporary measure. Their numbers are too great. Aiden's gaze hardened. Prepare for hand-to-hand combat. If they breach the walls, we meet them with steel. As the undead began to scale the walls, the defenders readied themselves. Aiden drew his sword, stepping forward to meet the first of the creatures as it clambered over the parapet. His blade sang through the air, meeting rotted flesh with a sickening crunch. Beside him, warriors of all races fought shoulder to shoulder, their usual racial boundaries obliterated by the need for mutual survival. Dwarves swung heavy axes, elves wielded slender swords with deadly efficiency, and humans fought with gritty determination. The battle continued, each minute dragging out as an hour. Just as the situation seemed desperate, a loud horn sounded from the north. Aiden turned to see a new contingent of allied forces charging into the undead from behind. It's Gorthar and his orcs, Lyriel exclaimed, relief evident in her voice. With a renewed roar, the orc warriors slammed into the undead, their brute strength turning the tide. Aiden seized the moment, rallying his forces. Push them back, now, while we have the chance. With the combined force of the renewed defense and the orc reinforcements, the tide of the battle slowly began to turn. The undead, caught between the hammer of the orc charge and the anvil of the fortress defenses, started to falter. As the last of the undead were driven back or destroyed, Aiden stood panting, his armor dented and smeared with the remnants of battle. He looked around at the exhausted but alive defenders, their faces reflecting a mixture of relief and sorrow at the cost of their victory. Balin approached Aiden, clapping him on the shoulder with a soot-blackened hand. That was too close. We need to ensure this doesn't happen again. Aiden nodded, looking out over the battlements at the retreating figures of the undead. Agreed. We start preparations at first light. This victory is just the beginning. As the dust settled and the last of the undead were driven back beyond the fortress walls, Aiden and his commanders gathered in the battered courtyard to assess the damage and plan their next move. Bodies of the fallen, both friend and foe, lay interspersed among broken weapons and scorched earth. Aiden, surveying the scene with a heavy heart, turned to his commanders. We held them off, but at a great cost. We need to be proactive to prevent another assault of this magnitude. Ideas? Mira stepped forward, her eyes weary but resolute. We need to understand how the undead are being summoned and controlled. If we can find the source, we can stop them, or at least slow them down. Balin nodded in agreement, wiping his brow with a soot-stained sleeve. And we'll need to rebuild and reinforce our defenses. I'll have my engineers start on the repairs immediately, but I suggest we also consider setting up a series of outposts along the northern border. Lyriel, who had been coordinating the archers during the battle, added, I'll send out scouts to track any remaining undead movements. It's crucial we gain intelligence on their numbers and routes. Aiden considered their suggestions, then looked toward Sir Cedric. What of our allies? We need every available sword and spell. It's time to call in any favors and reinforce our ranks. Sir Cedric, still clad in his battle-worn armor, responded with a nod. I'll send messengers at once. The neighboring kingdoms owe us their support. I'll make sure they honor their debts. As the group dispersed to carry out their respective tasks, Aiden walked through the courtyard, helping where he could with the wounded and offering words of comfort to the bereaved. The weight of leadership felt heavier than ever as he witnessed the cost of their victory. Later, by the light of a flickering campfire, Aiden met with his closest advisors to reflect on the day's events and prepare for the future. We were lucky today, Aiden began, his voice tinged with fatigue. The undead were relentless. If not for the orc reinforcements, we might not have held the line. We can't rely on luck for the next attack. Lyriel, looking into the flames, spoke up. We've been reactive for too long. It's time we take the fight to them. We have the Aegis of Aiden, and with the right strategy, we can turn it into more than just a defensive tool. Mira, organizing maps and reports beside her, chimed in. Agreed. And with the intelligence my scouts will gather, we'll have a better understanding of the enemy's movements. We can find vulnerabilities to exploit. Balin, his expression grim but determined, added, and my engineers will fortify our positions. Next time, we'll be ready to not just defend, but to counterattack. Aiden looked around at his trusted leaders, their faces illuminated by the campfire's glow, each marked by the day's trials yet unwavering in their resolve. Then let's prepare. We'll build, we'll plan, and we'll strike. This is our home, Our people. We will protect them, no matter what comes. In the command tent, the atmosphere was cautiously optimistic as Aiden and his senior commanders gathered around the strategic map, reviewing the latest reports from the front lines. Sir Cedric, clad in his ceremonial armor, broke the silence. Commander, our scouts report a significant development. The undead forces have ceased their advances. They are currently holding positions in the dark marshes, showing no signs of further aggression. Aiden leaned forward, scrutinizing the map with a critical eye. Have there been any changes in their command structure or signs of internal conflict that could explain this sudden halt? Lyriel, who had been coordinating reconnaissance missions, responded. There's no clear indication of internal strife within their ranks, Commander. However, our spies have observed unusual movements that suggest they might be regrouping or possibly waiting for something. Aiden rubbed his chin thoughtfully. This could be a strategic ploy to lure us into complacency. Mira, what's your take on this? Mira, the elven strategist, shared her perspective. If this is indeed a tactic, it's unlike any we've seen before from them. This might be an opportunity for us to strengthen our defenses and press on with gathering more allies. Balin, the dwarf engineer, added gruffly, I recommend we use this time wisely. We can fortify our positions and perhaps even launch small reconnaissance missions to test their readiness. Aiden nodded in agreement. Both points are valid. Let's proceed with caution. Balin, begin enhancements on our defensive structures. Lyriel, increase surveillance. I want a continuous flow of information. Any changes in their behavior, I want to know immediately. Sir Cedric interjected. Should we also consider bolstering our forces? Perhaps recruiting from the local villages? Aiden considered this for a moment, then replied, Yes, start with the volunteers from the northern settlements. They've been eager to support our cause, but make sure they're properly trained. We can't afford to be unprepared if this turns out to be the calm before the storm. As the meeting drew to a close, Aiden stood and addressed his commanders firmly. This ceasefire, whether genuine or not, gives us a rare chance to regroup and reassess. Let's not waste it. I trust each of you to execute your responsibilities with the utmost diligence. Dismissed. The commanders saluted and quickly dispersed to carry out their orders, each step echoing in the silent tent. Aiden lingered a moment longer, staring at the map, his mind racing through countless scenarios. Lyriel approached him, her expression thoughtful. Aiden, if this is truly a pause from the undead, it might also be a chance for you to rest. You've been at the forefront of every battle, every planning session. Aiden smiled wryly, appreciating her concern. Rest would be welcome, but as you know, a commander's work is never done. Still, I'll try to find some moments of peace. Thank you. Lyriel, the temporary peace allowed Aiden to traverse through his campgrounds, observing his forces regroup and retrain. The usually vibrant sounds of sword clashes and marching drills now mingled with the lighter tones of laughter and conversation, a rare moment of respite. As Aiden approached the training fields, he spotted Sir Cedric overseeing a group of new recruits. Approaching him, Aiden caught the tail end of Cedric's instructions. Remember, the strength of your swing isn't just in your arms. It's in your stance, Cedric was saying. Balance is key. Aiden waited for Cedric to finish before engaging. Cedric, how are the new recruits shaping up? Turning to Aiden with a nod, Cedric replied, better than expected. The local villagers have shown remarkable enthusiasm. They're eager, if a bit unpolished. Good to hear, Aiden responded, surveying the recruits with a critical yet hopeful eye. We'll need every able body ready if the ceasefire breaks. Do we have enough arms and armor to equip them? We're a bit short on armor, but Balin's team is working double shifts to outfit everyone, Cedric answered, wiping his brow. We'll be ready, come what may. Aiden clapped Cedric on the shoulder. Keep up the good work. I'm heading to the mages' tents next. We need their wards ready. As Aiden walked towards the mages' area, he found Lyriel coordinating with Mira, who was poring over several maps. They looked up as he approached. Mira, Lyriel, how goes the strategic planning? Aiden inquired, gesturing towards the maps. Mira responded, her voice filled with a focused intensity. We're identifying potential weak points in our defenses and reinforcing them. Also, we're keeping an eye on the undead's last known positions. If they move, we'll be the first to know. Lyriel added, and I'm setting up more frequent patrols along the perimeter. In the late evening, under the dim glow of lantern light in the central meeting tent, Aiden convened with his top advisors to deliberate on their strategy moving forward. Each face around the table was marked by the traces of war but also by a shared determination. Aiden addressed the group, his voice steady and commanding. This ceasefire has given us a moment to breathe and to build, but we must also plan our next steps. We can't afford to wait for the next assault. We need to be proactive. Mira, looking up from a stack of reports, chimed in. I've been analyzing the patterns of the undead's previous attacks and their current movements. There's a predictable rhythm to their strategies that we might exploit. Lyriel leaned forward, her eyes keen. What do you suggest? Mira spread out a detailed map on the table, pointing to a series of marked locations. Here, and here. These are their staging grounds before each attack. If we could disrupt their supply lines and command structures, we can weaken them significantly. Balin rubbed his chin thoughtfully. We could use small, mobile units to carry out hit-and-run attacks on these sites. My engineers can rig explosives to cause chaos and destruction in their ranks. Sir Cedric nodded in agreement. And I can lead the cavalry to support these strikes. We'll provide a quick escape route and extra muscle if things get heated. Aiden considered their suggestions, then turned his attention to Lyriel. How quickly can you deploy scouts to these areas to gather more intel? Lyriel responded promptly, immediately. I can have teams moving out at first light. They'll be stealthy and report back within 2 days. Aiden looked around the table, feeling a surge of pride for his capable leaders. Excellent. Let's proceed with this plan. We'll strike swiftly and retreat before they can counter. Meanwhile, we continue strengthening our defenses and fortifying our positions. The group nodded, each member clear on their role in the plan. As the meeting drew to a close, Aiden added, "This is a critical moment for us. Our actions now could determine the course of this conflict. Let's be sharp, let's be cunning, and let's take the fight to them." As his advisors dispersed to carry out their tasks, Aiden stayed behind, gazing at the map sprawled across the table. His finger traced the lines that marked the boundaries of their territory and the encroaching darkness beyond. Mira lingered, her expression thoughtful. "Aiden, are you sure about this?" "It's aggressive." Aiden looked up, his gaze firm. "It's necessary. We've been on the defensive for too long. It's time we show the undead and the Creator that we're not just survivors, but contenders." Mira nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "Then we'll make it work. I'll ensure our teams are prepared for anything." "Thank you, Mira," Aiden said, offering her a tired smile as she left the tent.